Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings Benny's Bats edition for Friday the 13th, Friday, May 13th. Got a nice 14-game slate on tap for tonight. There is a game in Coors Field. We're going to be talking about each game. What we like to do here in the Benny's Bats section, we go through each matchup, figure out what the weakness at each pitcher is, and then figure out which bats are profiled to do the best against them. So let's start right at the top. The first game we're going to look at here, San Diego against Milwaukee. Got Andrew Cashner pitching for San Diego. He actually has a sore hamstring, which is something that I never like to see with a pitcher because obviously if you're a pitcher, you need your legs. That's how you push off. That's where you get your power. That's where you're landing and doing that. And if you're sore there and you're off a little bit, thinking so much about your landing spot or your push off spot, it usually does affect the pitcher when he's on the mound. I got a feeling that Cashner is going to get lit up here today. Left-handed bats are usually the way we try to attack this guy, but if he's not feeling well and he's not pitching well, I even think some of the right-handed guys are in play. Scooter Gennett, the one left-handed bat who should be up towards the top of the order. Now that all these guys are healthy, Alex Presley is down at the bottom of the order. So I know people keep wanting to roll this guy out there at min price, but I think he had his little run, and I don't really think he's somebody that I want to have a lot of exposure to anymore. I do want to have some Scooter exposure, though. I mean, he had 2 hits yesterday against a right-handed pitcher. We know that this guy's a great left-handed bat, hits right-handed pitching really well. Definitely somebody I want to have exposure to. You really got to like Ryan Braun, 365 WOBA, 203 ISO score. Definitely somebody who hits well in righty-on-righty situations. I could even see putting a little bit of, Domingo Santana in here up top. He's somebody that can get on base for you, score some runs, steal a base if he needs to. If you want to get crazy and stack this game up, I guess you can look at guys like Chris Carter as well and Luke Croy. It is a good hitter's ballpark. Cashner does have the negative park switch going from San Diego, pitcher friendly, over to Miller Field in Milwaukee, which is definitely hitter friendly. A lot of home runs fly out of there. So I wouldn't be opposed to using some of the guys with some upside there. On the other side of this game, we got the young pitcher, Junior Guerrera, in there. Left-handed bats have done better against him in limited innings in the majors, but right-handed bats have been okay too. There really are no left-handed bats in the San Diego lineup. I mean, Brett Wallace is about the only one, and even in a decent matchup yesterday, I think he went like 0 for 4, 0 for 5. You can look at guys like I guess Matt Kemp and Will Myers and BJ, who I refuse to call Melvin Upton. But none of this is really stuff that I'm excited with. I mean, we have a 14-game slate. There's a lot of other spots to look at here, so not really trying to have any San Diego bats, although I'm not really a big fan of Guerrera. I think that, San Diego could get some runs off him. I just don't see them exploding for big upside here. Next game we can look at, we got Atlanta against Kansas City. Julio Teheran is on the mound for Atlanta. He's been lit up last year by left-handed bats. They hit over 300 against them, had 18 home runs and 91 innings of work. I really am not a fan of Teheran. I expect him to struggle in this game. I expect Kansas City to put up a bunch of runs against them. A guy like Eric Hosmer makes a lot of sense, 386 WOBA, 186 ISO. Alex Gordon, somebody we talked about yesterday. I really like this guy. Moved up into the 5 hole. He's been producing since he's up there. He's got his WOBA up to 350, ISO score up to 170. He's still pretty cheap on all the sites, and he's the second best left-handed bat they have on this team. Kendrys Morales is not hitting well at all right now to start the year. He's another lefty you can look at if you want to, but for me, it's Hosmer over Morales all day long, with both of them only being first base eligible. If you want to add in some guys, obviously Lorenzo Cain is a solid option. Sal Perez, right-handed bat up there. That's probably about the extent of it that I'm looking at. I really like these lefties, though. I think Hosmer and Gordon are 2 guys that I'm going to have some exposure to against Teheran today. On the other side of this game, we got Edinson Volquez in there, and right-handed bats have done a tad better against him. But other than Freddie Freeman, who's a lefty, 387 WOBA, 231 ISO for him, this lineup is just garbage. So I guess Volquez is probably in a good spot here, but I mean, if you can tell by just the way I'm talking, he's not a guy that I really love for upside. He's probably better off over on FanDuel because I definitely think he is going to get the win, but I just don't see him having like a huge game, like putting up a 7, 8 inning, 10 strikeout performance. It's just not really what Volquez does. He's very efficient. He does get a lot of ground balls. He does, keep the ball in the ballpark, but fantasy-wise, I don't think he has the kind of upside that we're really looking for. Although, like I said, it's Atlanta. It is a good spot, and you're going to see a lot of people rolling them out there tonight. Next game we can talk about, New York Mets traveling to Coors Field in Colorado. Matt Harvey's pitching, and he has been pitching better recently. But I mean, guys, this is Coors Field. If anything, I think I'd rather, stack up Colorado bats against them, which I don't think is going to be the most popular option today. So I think you're going to get these guys at decent ownership if you want to look at them. Probably the lefties are the ones I look at. Harvey's got good numbers against this team, so it's not like any of these guys have really hit him hard. But again, it's Coors Field. I mean, even if you think Harvey's going to pitch well, I still don't think Harvey pitching well gives me any, idea or any fathom that I want to use Harvey on the mound tonight. If I'm doing anything, I'm probably taking Colorado bats, most likely the lefties and the guys in the middle of the order. The Cargos, Arenado, who's actually a righty, maybe a Parra or a Blackman up top or, something like that. I'm really not taking Harvey. If anything, I'd take the bats, but I'm not really even thrilled about that. I do want to take a lot of the bats on the Mets team, though. You got John Gray, who's a young guy, stud prospect, was a top draft pick. He has horrible numbers at home in his career, though. He has gotten lit up in Coors Field basically every time he's pitched there. You got Michael Conforto, 391 WOBA, 270 ISO. Curtis Granderson, 372 WOBA, 220 ISO. Duda, 357 WOBA, 238 ISO. Like all those left-handed bats there up at the top of the Mets order. Cespedes, righty on righty situations, 385, 276. So another guy you definitely got to consider. Neil Walker, someone you can throw in there. David Wright hitting second, somebody else you can throw in. Have no problem stacking up the Mets. They're the visiting team in Coors Field. They get a full 9 innings of at bats. Lefty heavy lineup going up against a right-handed pitcher who struggled at home. A lot of things here point to the Mets having a pretty good upside and a pretty good game today. Although I'm not going to lie to you guys, they're going to be pretty highly owned. I don't think that the Mets in a good spot today is much of a secret. Next game we talk about San Francisco at Arizona. I'm not really looking at the pitchers in this game because I don't really start pitchers in Arizona. It's basically next to Coors Field, probably the best hitters park in the National League. Jeff Samardzija has actually had a really good start to 2016. In 2015, left-handed bats was the way to go after him. Gave up a 277 batting average, gave up 20 home runs in 106 innings. So basically a home run every 5 innings. The guy who stands out the most is probably Jake Lamb. He's been hitting in the cleanup spot. He's got the right splits to go up against him today. Again, I don't love the upside with Lamb, but I should say I like the upside with Lamb. I don't love the consistency, though. So he's not a guy I'd throw in my cash games, but he is pretty cheap. He's like 3,300. It's somebody that definitely has some upside, definitely has some power. Left-handed bat going up against a right-handed pitcher that gives up a lot of home runs. Bat and cleanup. He's got Goldie in front of him, so he should get up with guys on base at least a couple times in this game. Lamb is somebody I'd look at. The other guy I like is actually Goldie, 403 WOBA, 246 ISO. These are the two guys that are really standing out to me. I do like Samardzija. He's been pitching well this year, but I'm not using him here in Arizona. And then on the other side of this game, Shelby Miller, definitely somebody I want to target against. 7.36 ERA, 1.77 whip to start the season. He's been horrible. He's in Arizona, which is a really bad park for pitchers. You can look at the right-handed bats like Pence and Posey. I think they're in play. I really like some of these left-handed bats against him as well. Denard Span leading off, Joe Panik, who homered yesterday, Brandon Belt, who's been hitting pretty well this year. If I'm doing anything today, I think I'm taking, San Francisco. I think the Mets stack is obviously going to be very popular in Coors Field, but I also think San Francisco is going to be pretty popular and, rightfully so against a gas can like Miller. Next game we can talk about Houston against Boston. We got Stephen Wright, the knuckleballer, going up for Boston, and this guy's been really good. I mean, he's given up like a 150 batting average to righties, a 160 batting average to lefties. I mean, there's not much here that I think I want to take. He's actually a more than a strikeout per inning, I think, in the early going. I mean, there's really nothing you can say bad about this guy. One guy who I would look at, George Springer. When we have a knuckleball pitcher, I kind of look to see what they've done against, Wright, and I also kind of take a look to see what they've done against R.A. Dickey. I know they don't throw the exact same kind of knuckleball, but I think that gives you a better idea of if guys can hit the knuckleball or not than, looking at their WOBA or their OPS or their batting average or any of the other myriad of stats that we look at when we're going through, a slate every day. Springer's 3 for 7 against knuckleball pitchers with a home run. So he's somebody I have a little bit of interest in, but like I said, Wright has been very, very good. So I'm not really looking to stack up a lot of bats against them. And then on the other side of this game, we got Lance McCullers making his season debut. This guy's actually a really good pitcher, had a really solid season last year, high strikeout kind of guy, didn't get lit up for a lot of runs. My problem is this is his first start back off of injury, and he's going up against an offense that's on fire. I mean, in the last 4 games, this offense has put up about 50 runs, 14, 13, 14. I think they had like 10 more last night to add to it. So just absolutely eye-popping numbers. Top to bottom, this entire lineup is hitting. The lefties is the way I do want to go after McCullers. So guys like Ortiz, 424 WOBA, 335 ISO. Guy like Travis Shaw, 368 WOBA, 200 ISO. But you've also had guys like Dustin Pedroia hitting in the 2-hole that's been on fire. Xander Bogaerts, another guy who, doesn't have a ton of upside, but has been cash game safe for the last week and producing for us. Mookie Betts, who always goes low owned because of his price and, the fact that for an extra $100 or $200 or $400, you can get, the Bryce Harpers and the Mike Trouts and the Giancarlo Stantons of the world. But all these guys have been producing well. I mean, even the bottom of the order, guys like, Chris Young probably won't be in against the right-handed pitcher. You may still see Jackie Bradley Jr., who's been just in fuego and putting up good numbers every day. Like I said, this offense is so hot right now. I like McCullers. I think there'll be spots where we'll want to use him later on in the season. I do not think this is one of them, making his first start coming off the DL, going up against a team that has just been absolutely mashing the ball lately. Next game we can talk about, Minnesota at Cleveland. You got Josh Tomlin on the mound for Cleveland, and he's kind of a reverse splits guy. Right-handed bats have had a higher average and hit more home runs against them. This Minnesota team does not hit well against right-handed pitching. I guess a guy like Miguel Sano is in play. He's got the best numbers, but he hasn't had a great start to the season. I do like Byung-Ho Park a little bit as well. Somebody that keeps going low-owned and under the radar, but this guy's kind of sneaky good. He cooled off the last 2 or 3 games, but before that, he was putting up double-digit fantasy points. Basically, I think it was like 4 out of 6 games or something crazy like that. So he does have some upside. He is always low-owned, and people just kind of shy away from this Minnesota team because, well, let's face it. I mean, they've had a really bad start to the season. They got a low batting average. They got a high strikeout rate. They don't score a lot of runs. This is the kind of team you want to target a pitcher against. Tomlin does have a little bit of strikeout stuff. Not huge numbers, though, so I guess you can kind of look at him if you want to. I don't really think he's an elite play today, but, he's definitely somebody that made my short list that I'm going to be, looking into a little further before lineups lock. On the side of the game, we got Ricky Nolasco. He's kind of been he hasn't been horrible, but he hasn't been good. He's kind of been equally not great to both right and left-handed bats. 250, 260 kind of batting average in there. Home runs, but not an absolute ton of them. So, he's somebody that I'm not going to use, obviously, but, I think we can use a couple bats against him. Really like Jason Kipnis, who's been heating up lately. 387 WOBA, 163 ISO score. Left-handed bat going up against the righty Nolasco, hitting up towards the top of the order. Kipnis definitely somebody that's in play, somebody I want some exposure to. And one of the guys that hits in front of him, not your typical leadoff hitter, but Carlos Santana has been hitting leadoff, and he's starting to hit the ball. I like the fact that he's hitting leadoff. It gives him a chance to get that 4th, maybe even 5th at bat, depending how well the offense does. And like I said, he's been hitting it a little bit better. He is a switch hitter, so he'll be batting from the left side probably against Nolasco today. Carlos Santana, I think, has a little bit of upside as well. Excuse me. Next game we'll look at Oakland at Tampa Bay. You got Jake Odorizzi, who's a little bit of a reverse splits guy. Right-handed bats tend to do better against them, at least over the course of the last 3 seasons. Higher average and more home runs from the right side. This is a pretty left-handed lineup for the Oakland Athletics. They do have 2 guys righty on righty that can hit the ball pretty well, though. Chris Davis is the one that kind of jumps off at the top of the list. He's pretty cheap at only $3,400. Not the greatest hitter's park down there in Tampa Bay, and Odorizzi does have strikeout stuff, so he has some upside here. He's actually a guy I have on my short list as well. But I do like Chris Davis against them. 355 WOBA, 256 ISO, so he does have some power, as we can see by that ISO number. He is somebody that could tag Odorizzi for a home run. Danny Valencia would probably be the other guy that could fall into that, into that same, argument. 363 WOBA, 230 ISO, righty on righty. He's actually hits pretty well righty on righty, so those would be the 2 guys that I'd look at. Not really on guys like Reddick and Vogt today. I just don't think this is the right matchup for them against Odorizzi, who's, tougher on left-handed bats, basically. On the other side of this game, we got Rich Hill pitching, the lefty, and he's looked good, man. Very, very high K numbers, low batting average this year. Definitely think he's a viable option that you can look at. The strikeout upside alone always makes him intriguing for me. There are a couple guys on Tampa Bay that hit left-handed pitching well. I think Logan Forsythe is going to be playing. He got hit by a pitch the other day, sat out. He was available to pitch hit last night, and the coach said that, he was going to be resuming his normal duties. Well, his normal duties is leading off and starting at second base, so I'm assuming he's in the lineup, but I mean, I don't want you guys going and putting him in there and then being like, oh, Benny told me to play him. It's not a great matchup for him against Rich Hill. Rich Hill's been pretty good, but Forsythe actually hits left-handed pitching very well. 413 WOBA, 299 ISO, probably some of the best numbers you're going to find at the second base position, today. So I definitely think he could be in play if he gets in there. Evan Longoria, 386 WOBA, 227 ISO, another guy who hits lefties well. And then Brandon Geyer, who usually hits second in the order. It usually goes Forsythe, Geyer, Longoria whenever they face a left-handed pitching, because Geyer's a 383 WOBA, 190 ISO too. So those top three in the order, very tough on left-handed pitching. It gets much weaker, though, once you get down to the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 slots. Toronto, next game we talk about Toronto at Texas. You got R.A. Dickey on the mound for Toronto. And he really hasn't been great this year. Right-handed bats, righty on righty, actually do better against them. I like to look at guys who I've seen hit the knuckleball well when they're playing against him. And there really aren't too many there. He did pitch against this Texas team the first time they played. The line of the Shields went 2 for 2 against them. So obviously the Shields saw the ball pretty well. Could be somebody that I think you can sneak in there at the top of the order. If he's up there at the top, if he's hitting in like the 8 or 9 hole, I don't like him as much. But if he's leading off, I think he's somebody we can look at. Adrian Beltre, another guy, righty on righty, should be in a pretty good spot. Some of these lefties have struggled a little bit. Guys like Fielder and Moreland don't have great numbers against Dickey lifetime. Mazzara, very limited innings. We're not really sure. Rognit Odor, same situation. Limited at-bats, limited opportunities. Not really sure how well he's going to do against Dickey. Dickey actually pitched better the last 2 games that he's been out there. But like I said, this is a guy that's been getting lit up all season long. So I don't think you really have to stress it. I do think he gives up a couple runs here to Texas. On the other side of this game, I also think Martin Perez is going to give up a couple runs. I mean, this is a guy who gave up a 304 batting average to right-handed bats last year. He does keep the ball on the ground, though. He did not give up a lot of home runs, which is something I think people need to realize. If you're looking for all these big, guys that pounded left-handed pitching on the Blue Jays last year to hit a whole bunch of home runs, Perez is not a guy that gives up a lot of home runs. He does give up a lot of hits. He does give up a lot of runs. But like I said, he does limit the damage from the home runs. So it's going to be more of a carousel stacking, a couple hits kind of deal here. Then I think it's going to be a, one-off, just take Donaldson and throw him in your roster, or, throw in Batista or Encarnacion. Those are some of the guys that I do like, though. I mean, Donaldson, 459 WOBA, 369 ISO against left-handed pitching. You definitely want some exposure to that. He's obviously expensive, but he's expensive for a reason. He's a very good player and absolutely owns left-handed pitching. Encarnacion's been hitting lefties really well this year, 374 WOBA, 242 ISO since the start of 2015. He's probably my second favorite play. Michael Saunders, even in lefty-on-lefty situations, has actually been hitting lefties very well this year. Joey Batista, throughout his career, always hit lefties well. Russ Martin, same situation. So I do think there are a couple guys on Toronto you can look at. Like I said, I'd rather stack this team up than take some of these guys as one-offs, because I think there's going to be a lot of singles and doubles and, 4, 5, 6 hit innings that wind up getting them their runs, as opposed to, one swing, 2, 3 run home run kind of deal for them to, to score some runs. Next game up, we got the Chicago White Sox coming to visit the New York Yankees today. Chris Sale is on the mound, and he's been lights out to left-handed bats. Right-handed bats he's been solid against, too. I mean, like a 220, 230 batting average over the last year and a half or so. Decent home run numbers. He does get tagged for a couple home runs every now and then. But, I mean, who do you really want to take on this Yankees team? You probably have Starlin Castro, a right-handed bat, hitting second. You may have Beltran from the right side hitting 4th or 5th. Teixeira from the right side hitting 3rd, 4th, or 5th. This is a very left-handed dominant lineup that the Yankees have out there. And the right-handed bats they have aren't all that great. You look even at the bottom of the order, Didi Gregorius, Chase Headley. I mean, these are not guys that I'm really going to actively be staying away, actively trying to get into my roster. I think I would much rather use a guy like Sale here, who could be in line for another, 10 to 14 strikeout kind of game, go 7 or 8 innings and, maybe limit the Yankees to only 2 runs or less. So I think I like Sale here more than I like any of the Yankee bats. On the other side, I do like some White Sox bats, though. He's a stud rookie. This kid is hanging on by a thread in the major leagues. If he has a bad start here, it's very likely they're going to send him down to the minors and let him try to work it out, because he's been horrible to start the year. Left-handed bats have always done a little better against them, but this year, they're even knocking them around. Against right-handed pitching, Jose Abreu, righty on righty, 375 WOBA, 229 ISO since the beginning of 2015. probably the best power bat that they have there on that White Sox team. I also really like Adam Eaton today, 360 WOBA, 163 ISO, leading off at the top of that order. You know, a guy that just consistently gets on base for you, scores some runs, he can steal, has a little bit of pop. So I think I like those two guys. You know, like I said, Adam Eaton and Jose Abreu, probably the only two White Sox I'm looking to use, but I will have some exposure to both, and probably together. Where I use them, I usually use the two of them together. Next game we can talk about Cincinnati at Philly. I think we get some runs in this game as well. Jeremy Hellickson pitching for Philly. Left-handed bats have a much higher batting average against them over the last couple of years. You know, Joey Votto, 409 WOBA, 224 ISO, definitely the top option that you can look at here. You know, Philly is a good hitter's park, especially for left-handed bats. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Votto jack one out here. Brandon Phillips has been hitting well. He's averaged 12.5 DraftKings points over his last 8 games. So yeah, even though Hellickson's not a guy who really scares me, I think Phillips could be in play. You know, if you want to get crazy and stack it up, you can look at guys like Cozart, Duvall, Suarez, Jay Bruce. You know, I think all these guys are in decent spots here. I'm not a fan of Hellickson. I think he's, you know, due for some regression back to the mean after having a really good start to the season. So I'm expecting him to give up a couple runs here. And then on the other side, we got the rookie, Brandon Finnegan, another guy who had 1 or 2 good starts earlier that has basically been getting ripped since. Right-handed bats have been doing a lot of that damage against the lefty. You know, Darren Ruff, 422 WOBA, 246 ISO. Those are elite kind of numbers for a guy that you can get for really cheap. So he's definitely somebody that I'm going to have exposure to on some of my lineups. You know, Rupp and Ruiz both hit left-handed pitching well. I think Ruiz is going to be the starter today, which is good because he actually has a 409 WOBA, 246 ISO against, you know, left-handed pitching, which again are elite numbers, especially for somebody at the catcher position. If he's hitting 4th or 5th in that lineup, I think you definitely got to take a look at Ruiz at home in Philly. You know, Maikel Franco, 370 WOBA, 280 ISO. Again, huge numbers against left-handed pitching. And then Andres Blanco, if he gets back in the game, 403 WOBA, 213 ISO against left-handed pitching. You know, I think if they keep him in the 2-hole today, I really like the idea of stacking up a whole bunch of these bats for the Phillies. You know, if Blanco's in the 2-hole, followed by Franco, followed by Ruff, followed by Ruiz, I think that's a really solid 4-man stack over on FanDuel. That's kind of cheap. And I would even have some exposure to it over on DraftKings and then round it out. You know, you're taking away some of the positions that are, you know, a little bit tougher to fill there. And you're able to get some pretty good players to fill them in. So I think that they could score some runs here against Finnegan. Next game we'll talk about, we got Detroit going up against Baltimore. You know, Justin Verlander's actually been pretty good. He's been tough on left-handed bats. Right-handed bats have actually hit him harder over the course of the last 3 seasons. So I don't know how much I love Chris Davis today, although he is a guy that has huge numbers against right-handed pitching. I think Manny Machado probably stands out the most to me. 401 WOBA, 259 ISO score. You know, he's somebody I want to have some exposure to. You might Trumbo or an Adam Jones here today, guys that could have some upside, righty on righty. You know, decent hitters with some power and a good hitter's park in Baltimore. You know, I think those guys could be in play as well. But Machado, easily my favorite guy. And I think Chris Davis might be one of those guys that I'm going to be fading that a lot of other people are going to be telling you to play today. Chris Tillman, I actually think, is in a decent spot here. You know, left-handed bats, he's a little bit of – left-handed bats have done better against him. But right-handed bats actually hit him for more home runs, which makes this game a little bit scary to me. I think he'll do well against all these right-handed bats for Detroit. The problem is, if he does make a mistake, these are the kind of guys, these right-handed bats are the kind of guys that can take him yard. You know, Miggy, 399, 184, even in righty on righty. JD, 354, 230, even in righty on righty. And then you got a guy like Nick Castellanos, who's been absolutely on fire. You know, he's got high double-digit DraftKings points in 4 of his last 7 games now. But still, I mean, this is a guy that's put up like 19, 20, 25, 14. You know, those are some really, really solid numbers for a guy that continuously goes incredibly low owned, with the exception of people who are stacking up this Detroit lineup. Next game we're going to talk about, we got Miami going up against Washington. We got Tom Kohler on the mound for Miami, and left-handed bats have been the way to get at him. 258 WOBA, 16 home runs in 94 innings pitched last year, 2015. You know, Daniel Murphy's been moved up to the cleanup spot, which is something we've all been clamoring for because this guy's been hitting the ball really well. 369 WOBA, 208 ISO since the beginning of 2015. I think his batting average is still in the 360, 370 range for 2016 right now. You know, he's definitely somebody I like, especially if teams are going to keep pitching around and walking Harper. which is something I think Kohler will do because look at Harper's numbers: 465 WOBA, 349 ISO score, absolutely humongous. He's only 4,300 on FanDuel today, which is kind of cheap. He's 5,100 on DraftKings, which I even think is kind of cheap because he is 9 of 28 lifetime with 6 home runs against Kohler. Those are just some eye-popping stats. He's basically hitting about 320 against Kohler with a home run every 4.5 at-bats. So basically every game, if he gets 4 at-bats here today, probably 3 of them will be against Kohler. There's a very good chance that he's going to take Kohler yard again, just based on the numbers that we're looking at and the fact that he kills right-handed pitching and Kohler's kind of a weak left-handed pitcher on the road. Really like Harper, really like Murphy today. Again, the problem that you're going to have with Harper, if they're going to walk him every time, then you don't want Harper exposure. You really want exposure to Murphy hitting behind them, who will be getting up just about every single time with a couple runners on base and a chance to get some hits and score some runs, get some RBIs. The other side of this game, we got Gio Gonzalez pitching. Gio's a lefty. Right-handed bats hit 272 against him last year, although he doesn't give up a ton of home runs. So if you're looking for that one swing home run, probably not the guy you want to target that against. Although there are some guys on Miami that have the kind of power to do it. Obviously, Giancarlo Stanton at the top of that list. 461 WOBA, 493 ISO against left-handed pitching. And limited at-bats, he did miss a lot of last season, and these numbers only go back to the start of 2015. But still, eye-popping kind of numbers. Obviously, this guy has always hit left-handed, somebody that's a play. Like I said, I just don't think it's the best day to expect a home run out of him. A guy who goes under the radar that I really like, too, is Marcelo Zuna. 412 WOBA, 226 ISO. I mean, those numbers aren't far behind the numbers that Stanton's putting up. And again, anybody with over a 400 WOBA and an ISO over 220, those are elite level numbers, top 20 kind of numbers. So he's definitely somebody that should make your short list today. I also like JT Realmuto, right-handed catcher. I don't know if they're going to have him hitting up at the top of the order against the lefty. They had been putting Dietrich up there, who's a left-handed bat, but they also had been going against righties. So I'm interested to see how they work that out. Realmuto last week was hitting, leadoff, and he was hot. He was getting multiple hits every game. Again, this guy's a catcher. There's not a lot of catchers that you can get out there that have some upside. So I really like JT Realmuto here. If you want to, you could even stack up guys like Prado and Hechavarria are good against left-handed pitching. Not a lot of pop, not a lot of upside, 360 WOBAs, 120 ISOs out of those guys. But I do think they're viable options that could be in play as well. Let's see. Next thing we're going to look at, we got 2 games left. We got the Los Angeles Angels going up against the Seattle Mariners. Tropiano is on the mound for the Angels, and he's actually been pretty good. Does have a little bit of strikeout upside. Left-handed bats have hit him better. Right-handed bats have been okay against him. But again, he's cheap. He does have strikeout upside, so he could be a viable option. Guys like, Robinson Cano, 372 WOBA, 210 ISO. So I think he's somebody you want to be worried about. Also, Nelson Cruz, even though it's a righty and he hits better against lefties, still 365 WOBA, 224 ISO. Seattle, not the greatest hitters park here, so I do kind of shade more towards the pitchers than the hitters here. But those are 2 guys that I think are, viable options if you want to look at them. On the other side of this game, I actually kind of like Nate Carnes a little bit as well. Left-handed bats have a higher average against them. Any left-handed bats on this Angels team outside of Cole Calhoun, who's actually been playing a little bit better. Right-handed bats have hit him for a little more power, and there are a couple power-hitting righties on this team. Trout, obviously the best option, 409 WOBA, 288 ISO score, even in righty-on-righty situations. Definitely somebody that makes sense and is in play. CJ Cron is back in the lineup here. He's somebody that's got some upside. Obviously Pujols hit the home run in the late innings yesterday. He's somebody with like a 220 ISO score, definitely has some power, actually hits more home runs in righty-on-righty situations, so does profile as a guy that can do well against Carnes. I do actually like Nate Carnes a little bit here today, though. I think he's a sneaky SP2 option that you could pair with Sale for your cash gains. And I even think he has some upside with strikeouts for tournaments as well. So he's somebody that I'm kind of looking at. Last game on the day, you got St. Louis against the LA Dodgers. Michael Wacha is on the mound. He's very solid, doesn't normally have the strikeout upside, which is what kind of holds him back a little bit. So that's my only concern about using him. But he is a very good pitcher, so I'm not really looking at a lot of bats on this Dodgers team. He actually has reverse splits for the last couple seasons. He's been tougher on left-handed bats. Righties have actually done better against them. So a couple of guys that hit well in righty-on-righty situations. You can look at a guy like Justin Turner, who's back in the 3-hole. 366 WOBA, 183 ISO. Was 3 for 5 against Waka last year in their only meeting. So I think he's somebody that does make some sense and is somebody we can use. I heard people talking about Yasiel Puig already today, but Puig was moved down to like the 6th or 7th spot in the order. So I don't really know if I like that all that much. Again, it is righty on righty. He's not great righty on righty, but he's not bad either. I just think there's much softer spots that I'd rather pay for. So if I'm doing anything, it might be a cheap Justin Turner as a third base option. I don't really think I'm looking at anything else on this Dodgers team today, though. The last pitcher we have is Ross Stripling for the LA Dodgers. Solid start to 2016 for him, but this is a pretty tough assignment against the St. Louis team. The St. Louis team does have some upside. They have a lot of really solid hitters up at the top of the order. I like Carpenter. I like Moss or Adams, whichever one of the left-handers happens to get in there and is hitting in the cleanup spot. Matt Holliday's been hitting in the 3-hole. I don't think he's going to be in here today. They had been hitting him in the 3-hole because they had a DH and have been playing some interleague games. I think we'll probably wind up seeing, Stephen Piscotty, who's been hitting second and doing pretty well. I think we'll see Randall Gierchuk, who actually had great numbers last year and a lot of power in righty-on-righty situations, so he could be somebody to look at. We may even see a lefty like Jeremy Hazelbaker get into the lineup as well. So not really sure which of these guys is going to be in there outfield-wise for the Cardinals, but I do like the Cardinals and think that they can put up some runs against Stripling here. Not the greatest hitter's ballpark in LA, but this is a lineup that has been putting up runs and has been hitting and has been doing really well this year. And I feel like they always kind of go lower owned, and I feel like the algorithms don't like him either because you're usually able to stack up the top 5 guys in this Cardinals order, and it usually costs you well less than $20,000. You figure $4,000 is like a median floor for a good hitter towards the top of an order. If you can stack up, you usually get like a Gierchuk at 33 or a Holiday at 34. Even guys like Carpenter who are, studs at their position are still only like 41, 4,200. So it is very easy. It is very easy to fit some of these Cardinals bats in your lineup. And I do think they have upside. I do like them today. I do think we'll get a pretty good, pretty solid, way for him to go today. So that sums it up for all the games today. Thank you for joining us here at RotoCurve for our Benny's Bat section. Classy, BFS.